Chapter 102 Murder on Arrival. Walking away from the dock, Han Li had his two porters walk in front of him and lead him to a nearby inn. He planned to first have a proper rest and then think of his other affairs. These two men didn't hesitate to lead Han Li into the city. On the way, they turned 7 corners and changed directions 8 times. After they walked for a good while, he hadn't seen the slightest trace of an inn. Although Han Li continued to follow behind the two porters, he saw that with each passing road intersection, his surroundings became increasingly desolate. He wrinkled his brow. Although he hadn't lodged within a large city before, he still knew that it was impossible for an inn to be established in such a secluded place. What customers would possibly arrive here? Thus, when they brought him into a filthy, dark alley, Han Li bitterly smiled. He felt that he should immediately restrain the two and torture them into telling him what sort of scheme they were planning. Just as Han Li had thought to act, 10 large men suddenly appeared further up ahead in the alley. These men seemed somewhat familiar. Indeed, he had seen them earlier, at the docks. These men held a variety of iron clubs and daggers. At this moment, they gazed at Han Li and Crooked Soul with malicious intent. In addition, those two porters who were carrying Han Li's luggage suddenly charged into the crowd and turned their heads, giving Han Li a sinister smile. Han Li sighed. It seemed he no longer needed to interrogate them because he realized their plan. He didn't expect that, as soon as he stepped foot on Dr. Mo's hometown, he would come across a cheap plot to kill him for his money. Boy, don't blame our cruel hearts. You should blame whoever let you bring this much silver for your bad luck. A coarse voice spoke from behind him. Han Li turned to look, finding 7 to 8 robust men appear behind him. They were led by 2 men, one of them was tall and burly, and had black skin, while the other had a crooked head and rat eyes. They were Black Bear and Sun Ergo. This was not the first time these two had done this kind of shady business, plotting to kill and steal. They clearly understood that, so long as the job was done cleanly and no witnesses remained, the authorities would not take notice of it. After all, even if someone were to report a missing foreigner, the amount of people that went missing each year was far too great. It was impossible to expend the great amount of effort to look for them one after another. That was why, after Black Bear had finished talking, he did not hesitate to signal several men to charge. Those men brandished their deadly weapons and quickly surrounded Han Li and Crooked Soul. Seeing these large men's bloodthirsty, cruel appearances, Han Li could not help but feel a desire to kill flash through his eyes. He knew that these men had done such deplorable acts on more than one occasion, otherwise, they wouldn't reek so strongly of blood. Kill them all. Do not hold back. Han Li coldly commanded Crooked Soul. Upon hearing Han Li, Crooked Soul let out several soft roars, each roar carrying a trace of excitement. It suddenly charged out, rushing directly into the crowd. Who? The giant let out a punch as fast as lightning, hitting a large man's head. That robust man became like a bag of sand, flying crookedly into a stone wall. His blood and brains streamed all over the ground, only half of his head remained. At this time, one man wielding a dagger and another with a crude iron club took this opportunity to attack Crooked Soul's back. Crooked Soul didn't turn its head. Instead it waved its arm behind its neck, slashing around in a semicircle. Peng, peng. The pair's weapons flew into the air, along with the hands grasping them. Fresh blood dripped down between their thumbs and forefingers. Crooked Soul immediately stood on a single leg and swept the other leg behind him like a sickle as fast as the wind. The two assailants were immediately kicked in the abdomen and flew more than 3 meters away. They fell onto the ground, motionless. When the others saw these events, they sucked in a breath of cold air. A look of fear flashed in the faces of the men surrounding them. They became somewhat hesitant to attack. Even though they had stopped their hands, Crooked Soul shot its arms out without restraint, smashing the skulls of the 2 men who were at his side. Without Han Li's command, it would not stop its hand of its own accord. Sun Ergo and Black Bear's complexions were very unsightly. It was very clear that this large figure that they had mistaken as an ordinary bodyguard was actually a peerless expert. Kill this man. Each person who participates will be rewarded 20 taels of silver. Sun Ergo had an unclear premonition in his mind and hastily sent out the several experts at his side by issuing a great reward. As soon as the men beside Black Bear and Sun Ergo heard this, their faces showed an expression of joy. These shallow martial artists only knew some basic boxing skills and naturally couldn't tell that, against Crooked Soul, the difference in their strengths was like the distance between heaven and earth. They had merely believed that their opponent was simply a little stronger than them and slightly more skilled. Thus, they possessed no fear at all. Now, galvanized by the temptation of a great reward, they charged towards Crooked Soul one after another. After Black Bear heard Sun Ergo's words, his face twitched, but his face soon became calm. Without saying a single word, his gaze simply drifted erratically to and from Han Li. Currently, Black Bear was constantly complaining to himself. He and Sun Ergo were different. He was able to climb to his current position because he could rely on his strength in an exchange with real weapons. This was why, in addition to having an adequate physique and exceptional eyesight, he could enter the ranks of third-rank martial artists. As a result, when he saw Crooked Soul fight, his heart jumped like a spear. When his heart finally fell to the ground, he could see that Crooked Soul's skill was great profound. Even if the two gang leaders were to join the fray, their odds of success would not necessarily be high, let alone with their weak subordinates, who were like kittens and puppies. However, he didn't dare to flee because this large man had clearly not exerted his full strength. If Crooked Soul were to see him attempting to escape, Black Bear feared that he would die a faster death. In order to live, it seemed that he could only attack that rustic youngster, whose status was far greater than the large man's. Only by threatening this man with a hostage could Black Bear possibly escape from death. As for the silver, he wouldn't dare ask for it. With such a ferocious bodyguard, perhaps he was the young master of some wealthy provincial lord. He was clearly the son of some influential family and was disguising himself for a stroll. Today, Black Bear could escape death. Even if he had the blessing and protection of the gods, taking the heavy bundle was naturally an entirely different matter. Black Bear thought of this and decided to take advantage of his subordinate's charge. After he signaled Sun Ergo with his eyes, he stealthily approached the stage.